Hello and welcome back to the Crime Reel. For this week's true crime narration, we shall be going back to 2006 and visiting Medicine Hat, a city in southeast Alberta in Canada. With over 300 days of sunshine a year, Medicine Hat is thought to be the sunniest city in Canada, and back in 2006 had a population of around 57,000. With beautiful, picturesque landscapes, low cost of living, good schools, and a relatively low crime rate, Medicine Hat is generally viewed as a great place to live. So, in September of 2003, Deborah and Mark Richardson moved into their dream home in Cameron Road, a quiet suburban street in Medicine Hat. The couple, who married in 1991, had 2 children, a daughter named Jasmine and a son named Jacob, who were 9 and 5 respectively at the time of the move. The family settled into their new neighbourhood well, making friends with their neighbours. Deborah and Mark were happily married and shared a love of motorcycles. Mark was a talented mechanic and welder, was easygoing and had lots of friends. Deborah was a popular, bubbly woman. In 2006, Deborah had signed up for a course on small businesses and was hoping to start her own business after spending the previous few years being a stay-at-home mum. Now 12, Jasmine attended St Mary's School, where she was a happy, sociable and bright student. Her younger brother Jason, now 8 years old, loved wrestling figures and Star Wars, and he wanted to be a policeman or a soldier when he grew up. He was often seen by neighbours playing hockey in his back garden before walking the short distance to school. Sunday the 23rd of April 2006 was a bright, sunny day. The Richardsons' neighbour pulled onto her driveway and saw Mark's van parked outside his house. The neighbour's 6-year-old son asked if he could go and knock for his friend, Jacob Richardson, to which his mother agreed. Almost immediately, the young child ran back to his mother in a distressed state. He told her that he could see a body covered in blood through the basement window. The mother went to check, looked in the window, and hurried back to her car to call the police. Soon after, Inspector Brent Secondiak arrived at the house. Looking through the basement window, he saw a person covered in blood lying on the floor. Brent immediately called for backup, and when further officers arrived, they broke into the house using a battering ram, unsure of what they were going to find. The scene inside was shocking. On the lower floor of the house, they found the bodies of Deborah and Mark Richardson. They had both been stabbed multiple times. The family dog was sat next to Deborah's body, whimpering. There was a great deal of blood, including smears and handprints, in the hallway leading upstairs to the bedrooms. Here they came upon another devastating scene. Young Jacob's body was lying in a pool of blood on his bed. He had been stabbed multiple times and his throat had been slit. 2 15cm black-handled knives were found at the scene. One had been rinsed clean, whilst the other was still covered with dried blood and hair. One of the knives was bent at the tip, indicating the force with which it had been used. Immediately, the police realised that one of the family was missing. They began searching for 12-year-old Jasmine. Fearing the worst, they expected to find another body. When this did not happen, they became concerned that Jasmine was being held captive by the person who murdered her family. An Amber Alert was issued. However, after an initial search of the house, including Jasmine's online accounts, it quickly transpired that it was very unlikely that she was a victim. In fact, this 12-year-old girl was their prime suspect. During the preceding few months, Jasmine had undergone a dramatic change. Almost overnight, she went from a young girl playing forts in the garden to someone who fully embraced what the newspapers called the local goth culture. She began wearing heavy, gothic-style dark makeup and looked far older than her 12 years. She had started getting into trouble at school for the first time, particularly in relation to her inappropriate clothing. Jasmine had joined various online forums under screen names such as Runaway Devil, where she discussed her love of piercings, dark poetry and death metal music, and also her hatred of her parents. At a rock concert, she had met a man by the name of Jeremy Steinke. Jeremy, who was 23 years old at the time, claimed that he was actually a werewolf who had lived for over 300 years. Jeremy had a difficult upbringing. His father had beat him most days, and his mother turned to alcohol in an attempt to cope with her situation. When his parents divorced, things did not improve. 2 stepfathers followed, both of whom were violent towards Jeremy and his mother. Likely because of this, at around the age of 13, Jeremy developed an alternative persona of being a werewolf. As he reached adulthood, his friends knew that he liked the taste of blood, and he would wear a vial of blood around his neck. A former flatmate would later say how he had witnessed Jeremy slicing his own hand with a knife in order to drink his own blood. Jeremy became a guitarist in a heavy metal band called Project Status Quo, and he would dress completely in black, usually ripped black jeans with pins, a bandana around his neck which could easily be pulled over his face, a spiked dog chain as a choker, black eyeliner, and his short hair styled into spikes. When Jeremy met Jasmine, he had just broken up with his fiancée and was reportedly in a very dark place. The two quickly became obsessed with each other. Understandably, Jasmine's parents were not happy with their daughter spending time with a man almost twice her age, and they told her that she was forbidden from seeing him. However, neither Jasmine or Jeremy were prepared to accept this, and soon their online communication began detailing a very dark plan. Jasmine wrote to Jeremy stating that she had a plan which begins with me killing them and ends with me living with you. To which Jeremy replied, "Well, I love your plan, but we need to get a little more creative with, details and stuff." Jasmine and Jeremy spoke openly with their friends about their hatred of her parents and how they planned to kill them. These friends did not believe that Jasmine and Jeremy were serious. They thought that the pair were just sounding off. On Friday the 21st of April, Jeremy was at a party where he boasted that soon he was going to kill 3 people and then head to Europe with his girlfriend. The following day, Saturday the 22nd, whilst Mark was cooking a barbecue on his back porch for his family, Jeremy was watching the 1994 film Natural Born Killers, a film that he would later claim was the best love story of all time. By the following morning, Deborah, Mark and Jacob had all been stabbed to death. That same afternoon, as her family's bodies were being found by the police, a seemingly relaxed and happy Jasmine and Jeremy were hanging out together with a group of friends. Jeremy had a black eye, but this wasn't an unusual occurrence for a man well known for trouble by the local police. At around 8 a.m. the following day, Monday the 24th of April, the pair were tracked down and arrested about 100 miles away in Leader, Saskatchewan. They were with 3 friends who claimed that they believed they were going on a camping trip together. Both Jasmine and Jeremy were charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. Due to only being 12 years old at the time, Jasmine could not be named and was referred to in the press as JR, although it was clear to anyone reading the press coverage that she was the young daughter of the murdered family. In her first court appearance, Jasmine appeared shackled in an oversized blue jumpsuit. She did not speak other than to confirm her name, and suddenly this young girl who had presented herself as so much older looked like a 12-year-old child again. Because of the differences in their ages, Jasmine and Jeremy had to be tried separately. If convicted, the maximum sentence that Jasmine could receive would be 10 years, with no more than 6 of these being spent in custody, the remainder being served under supervision in the community, after which she would be free. However, Jeremy, if convicted, would face a life sentence without the possibility of parole for at least 25 years. After release, he would continue to be monitored for the rest of his life. During their time in jail awaiting trial, Jasmine and Jeremy exchanged letters where they promised to marry one day. They boasted about how they would become legends and expressed no guilt or remorse for their actions, just sadness that they hadn't managed to run away. Jasmine went to trial first, beginning on the 4th of June 2007. She pleaded not guilty, claiming that conversations about murdering her parents were hypothetical and that she never had any intention of acting upon them. The prosecution called around 70 witnesses, including several friends who provided details of how Jasmine was acting immediately after the murder. They also detailed how Jasmine had told them about her brother making a gurgling sound as he died. This was a fact that was backed up by the young boy's autopsy. The prosecution showed that 48-year-old Deborah had been killed first, having been stabbed 12 times. Her husband, Mark, rushed to her aid and attempted to defend himself with a screwdriver. He was overpowered and stabbed 24 times. Jacob had been strangled, stabbed, and then his throat was cut. The brutal, graphic nature of the crime came to light, with over 1,500 crime scene photographs being entered into evidence. Forensic evidence was presented linking Jasmine and Jeremy to the crime scene, including footprints found near the broken basement window, which were consistent with Jasmine's size 6 Converse and Jeremy's size 10.5 suede shoes. There was, however, so much blood in the basement of the house that investigators couldn't even attempt to take footwear impressions. On the 3rd of July 2007, Jasmine took the witness stand. She broke down in tears and said that she blamed herself for the murders because she had told Jeremy that she wished her family were dead, even though she did not mean it. She testified that she had tried to comfort her brother as they listened to their parents being killed and had retrieved a knife in order to protect herself. However, when Jeremy appeared and demanded that she stabbed her younger brother, she did so. She claimed that Jeremy then grabbed the knife and slit her brother's throat. Despite testifying that she was scared of Jeremy, Jasmine said that she was shocked when he left the house without her. She ran to a nearby convenience store to get cash and then called a taxi to go and meet up with Jeremy. Details about Jeremy's claims of being a werewolf were not disclosed in court as they were deemed to be too inflammatory and not relevant to the case. Additionally, the initial police interview with Jasmine was not shown as it was stated that the police used subtle threats and manipulation to gain a statement and violated Jasmine's right to have a lawyer present. The jury of 7 men and 5 women deliberated for just over 3 hours before returning their verdict. Jasmine was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to the maximum of 6 years in prison plus 4 years supervision. It would take another 16 months for Jeremy's case to go to trial. It was moved to Calgary due to the intense publicity surrounding the murders. Again, witnesses testified that Jeremy and Jasmine had confessed to the crimes and that Jeremy had claimed his victims were gutted like fish. The jury were told how, after his arrest, Jeremy had confessed to the murders to an undercover police officer. He reportedly told the officer that, as he stabbed Mark had asked why, to which Jeremy replied, "Because your daughter wanted it that way." He told the officer that he had killed Deborah first, but then had killed Mark in self-defense, even expressing surprise that he had managed to overpower the larger man. Jeremy stated that it was Jasmine and not himself who had killed Jacob. In court, a friend of Jeremy's testified that when Jeremy had been watching Natural Born Killers the night before the murders, there was a scene where the younger brother was spared, to which Jeremy had said that's where it would be different, she would kill her brother. When Jeremy took the stand on the 1st of December 2008, despite the horrific nature of the crimes for which he was charged, he came across as a more sympathetic defendant than Jasmine had in her trial. Talk of his abusive childhood and desperate need to be loved led on to how he had been controlled by Jasmine, who he believed to be older than her 12 years. Jeremy admitted being out of control on alcohol, marijuana, cocaine and ecstasy on the night of the murders, but said that he had never intended to kill anyone. He was simply planning on helping Jasmine sneak out of her house so that they could be together. He recalled stabbing Deborah once in the abdomen and could recall the struggle with Mark, but said that he could not remember anything else. This was all in contradiction to his extensive online posts before the killings, his confessions to friends, and his confession to the undercover police officer, which Jeremy claimed was purely prison bravado so that other inmates would leave him alone. The one point on which he was consistent was that it was Jasmine who had killed Jacob. His lawyers claimed that the crimes were as a result of an impulsive reaction, not premeditated murder, so he could only be found guilty of second-degree murder or manslaughter. On the 4th of December 2008, the 6 women and 6 men of the jury retired to consider their verdict. The following day, Jeremy was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison and will be eligible for parole after 25 years. In 2012, the Canadian press reported that Jasmine was responding well to therapy and was showing significant and genuine remorse after finally taking responsibility for what she had done. By the following year, it was reported that she was living under supervision and doing well at work, school, was living on her own, and was at low risk of reoffending, almost becoming a poster child for rehabilitation. She was given a new identity, and following the completion of her sentence and supervision, she is now a completely free woman. As additional information, 2 other teenagers were arrested and charged with accessory to murder after the fact and obstruction of justice. It is believed that these teens helped destroy evidence and provide a false alibi, as well as driving Jasmine and Jeremy out of the province on the so-called camping trip. The accessory to murder charges were later dropped, with both of them pleading guilty to obstruction of justice. Thanks very much for listening. Please add any comments down below. Thanks for listening to The Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst. I just want to thank Dan Archer for suggesting that I cover this case. Thanks, Dan. Goodbye.